The Modern Manufacturing Initiative Manufacturing Collaboration Stream. This is some very big dollars, very similar to what you'd see in a CRC grant. So it opens on the 11th of August and it closes on the 9th of September. So I'll just give you a quick snapshot of how I would analyse this grant. The first place I would go to is the assessment criteria. So this is in the guidelines. So have a look at section 6. What I generally do is look at how many criteria there are. In this scenario, there are 4, and they've weighted them all equally at 25 points. So I'll just run you through some of the approaches that I would take. So this section is about the program objectives. So you should demonstrate this by describing how your project will achieve the objectives and outcomes of this stream. So then I would then jump back to section 2 and then scroll down. And these will probably be your headings of that section. So you're going to be more productive, collaborative, leading edge, but the ones you want to grab are, scrolling down, the objectives. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 objectives, and then you've got probably another 4 in the outcomes. So I would title it, to foster collaboration. What might be the heading of this. So we want to foster collaboration between businesses, research organisations, investors, and other parties. So this section I would detail who the businesses are, who the research organisations are, who the investors are, and you might have between, I would say, probably 5 at least parties involved, if not get it up to that level. And segments of the manufacturing smile curve. I have not heard that term before, but obviously a quick Google will tell you what smile curve means, and then you would then, obviously that's in the value curve or something like that. So obviously they're looking at Australia being at the higher end of the value add and not just a standard labour input. So work out how you sit in the higher end of the smile curve. And then detail, how you're collaborating against all of these. And generally, it's going to be a vertical integration. You may have some collaborators or competitors involved. That would look even better. And then, so we look at number 2, support manufacturers to work together to build manufacturing networks and ecosystems and unlock complementary capabilities to overcome barriers to scale, grow, and access global markets. So the key there is in accessing global markets. They don't want to be funding a collaboration of Australian companies and they're going to be putting out other Australian companies out of business. So you want to be growing, ideally, every company in Australia that's related and then helping taking them into the export market. So the more you can grab in your network, the better off it's going to be. And then, give your collaboration a nice, funky name that sounds like everyone is working together. Okay, number 3, support long-term job creation. Okay, so job creation, I go to the extent of actually detailing how many jobs will be created and the exact role that they're going to be playing. So you might have 2 project managers, 3 leading hands, 5 forklift operators, 20 machine operators, and that's from one company. So go down and detail each of those and look for jobs that will be in higher value add activities. So not just labour, but look for those higher end jobs that will be created. And there it is there, more highly skilled workforce. So look to detail what those jobs are. Increase investment, number 4, increase investment in Australian manufacturing, particularly higher valued activity. So increase investment. So by leveraging the government dollars, you will then put in a lot more additional money into might be R&D or additional manufacturing, or the project will continue long after the government has invested that money. That's what I would add in for that increased investment. And then once again, high value added activities. So, we're talking robots, we're talking, 3D printing, anything that isn't really done anywhere else in the world, that's going to be what you want to be focusing Number 5, increase manufacturing capability, business acumen, knowledge diffusion, and expertise. So, manufacturing capability. So, obviously, capability means you can produce more. So, you can produce, 100% now, or you might be maxing out. But with this export opportunity that you're going to undertake, you're going to be, tripling the size of what you can deliver. Knowledge diffusion is all about helping the industry in Australia grow. So you might be, producing case studies, videos, how others in Australia can join your network and grow together. That is what you want to be doing on that side. Okay, then we go and mention the outcomes. So once again, give each of these their own heading, and then to the outcomes. So increase competitiveness in the national manufacturing priorities. So you can go and look up what those priorities are. That's where Australia has identified where they want to be leading edge, and increase competitiveness. So how are you going to measure how more competitive you are against the rest of the world? So is it price? Is it availability? Anything else that is, from a quality perspective or a product perspective, try to know what those points are going to be. And then increased manufacturing, exports, jobs, so growth and jobs. So once again, it's all about exports. So really play on what countries you're going to, what the opportunities are in each of those regions. So it's all about growing Australian exports and then indirectly the jobs. Outcomes, increased sharing of knowledge, resources, infrastructure between local manufacturers and research organisations. So what I take away from that is that you will need to be partnering with a research organisation to provide that R&D potential or any other sort of, processing or manufacturing technique. And then the knowledge and resources. So, you're going to have a repository of all this information. You're going to be sharing the knowledge in some manner. So you might be having, tours of each other's factories, or, some different processing methodologies that you could, share with everyone else in the network to help improve together. Okay, and then we've got increased introduction and application of new technology products and processes in the manufacturing sector. So talk about how the machinery, because this is really around infrastructure, how the machinery that you're going to buy is going to be better than anything else in the world. So it could be, turnaround times, it could be retooling times. There's many other metrics that you could use. The attention to quality. That is where I would be looking at. It might be lighter, might be faster, whatever is the mechanism to measure this. I would focus on that. So then we go back to the assessment criteria. So that should be the majority of section 1. So back to part B, how will your project develop and contribute to ongoing sustained collaborations, including how the collaboration will unlock benefits and capabilities. So how are you going to continue once this project is complete? So, are you going to be meeting monthly? Every 6 months you'll go and visit a manufacturing facility and analyze, problems together or learn from each other. That's what they want to see in this section here. And then unlocking the benefits and capabilities. So really everyone improves together and benefits from this network. How your project aligns and supports implementation of the national manufacturing priority roadmaps. We've sort of covered that one a bit, but once again, the government likes to ask the same question in different ways. So just go in detail which are the priorities that you're going to be undertaking, and have a look at that roadmap to see what is the feature of that particular area. Okay, how the project will benefit or transform the national manufacturing priorities again. So how are you going to elevate or transform those key areas of the priorities? So that accounts for a quarter of the scoring that you're going to be getting. Okay, now the benefits to Australia. So that would be obviously the benefits to the network. Okay, so how you demonstrate the nature, extent and timeliness of anticipated outcomes and the benefits the project will bring to Australia, including how your project aligns to the government broader policies, national manufacturing priorities of your project aligned with. So once again, go and look at what those priority areas are, use them as headings and as guides to respond to. So the things I draw from this are the timeliness. So we want to see quick wins. Obviously, we're in the COVID environment now, so the quicker we can turn things around, the better it's going to look. And then, then nature and extent. So that's really describing in more detail what those benefits are going to be. The extent that your project will maximise Australian employment outcomes. So I read from that they want to be employing Australians. So where are they going to be coming from? Are you going to be stealing them from someone else in Australia? So we don't want to be seen to be funding some Australian companies and then having other companies go out of business because you've taken all their employees. So how will you deal with that? Then we've got increased jobs and more highly skilled workforce. So once again, you are retraining them. You're taking labourers and you're reskilling them into CAD and CAM and 3D printing and robots and all that sort of stuff. So they are more highly employable is what they want as well. And we're not just doing manual labour, we're doing highly skilled activities. So identify the number and types of Australian jobs, and that's what I mentioned earlier. So that's what I do every time. So go through and detail the timeline from when the project is complete, and you might do a 3-year plan of how many jobs will come on and when. Detail what those roles are going to be. You might detail which organisations they're going to be sitting in, because this is a collaboration approach. And I even go to the extent of detailing what they're going to be paid. And if I've got even more time, then I'll go and detail job descriptions for what they are. So when they will be filled and how you determine this number. Haven't been able to ask how I determine this number in the past. So you might use some ratios for volume produced or dollar output, or you might be running additional shifts. So just come up with some metric. That'll be another heading that I would put in there. How I've determined this number. So just put in some metrics so that they can tick the box and say, yes, you have actually analysed it, not just pulled numbers from nowhere. How your project will create and retain other benefits for Australia, including IP or new skills. So generally for export, it's around having a product that the rest of the world can't produce, or having some metric or some manner that other countries can't replicate what it is that we're doing. So try to touch on IP, whether that's in patents or any other measure. So maybe the access to machinery. So talk about access to machinery, any patents, trademarks, anything else that can protect your product. And why the Australian government should be investing in your project. That will then relate back to the national manufacturing priority. So once again, very much a similar question, just asked in a different manner. So you've got to try to repeat yourself without actually repeating yourself. Impact on the project in terms of scale and timing. So the way I answer this one is that without the government's investment, this project either A, will not go ahead, or 2, will be a smaller style project. There might not be collaboration, or it might take longer to undertake. So touch on either one or multiple of those items. And then how you invest, how this investment will impact participants' ability to be self-sustaining and globally competitive in the future. So the government wants all these projects to be sustainable into the future. So they don't want to be having the projects or the collaboration or whatever it is end at the end of the project. So you will talk here about how the cash flows that will be generated will be reinvested. If there's a research body involved, obviously some of the money will spin off and go back into potential R&D with that research organisation to keep that side of it going. And then obviously it's got to be self-sustaining enough, that'll be enough profits to fund the participants. Then we move on to we're halfway through. So that is all about the project and the benefits. Now we're talking about who you are. So your track record and experience in managing projects of a similar nature or scale. In this one, because it's a collaboration, talk about any CRCs or collaborative projects that you've undertaken together. So that's the collaboration side. I'd also talk about the manufacturing for each individual parties that's going to be involved. So maybe pick a project manager from each of the parties that will be undertaking this. So you can have a bio on each of them and what they've undertaken of a similar size. I've gone to the extent of producing a bio of each person. So, okay, in 2019 they did a 5 mil project which installed a number of robots, or another person from the research organisation did a very similar project for another industry, and talk about some of the outcomes that they had. We also talk about the governance. So there's a governance plan that needs to be included in this. Talk about who's going to manage the overall, who's going to be the project managers from each of the areas, who's looking after finance, who's going to be reporting all this, how often is everyone going to be meeting on that. That should be included as well. And then I guess it sort of touched on a bit in the next one. I've obviously done a few of these in the past. You'll plan and manage and deliver the project, including collaborative arrangements. So collaborative arrangement, that to me says that there needs to be agreements in place between all the organisations. So get them signed off. Obviously, some of it's going to be IP. Obviously, it's going to be confidentiality because you're going to be sharing between organisations, how that's going to be managed. Where are you going to keep all the project documentation, because that's going to sit with one body. Is it in cloud? What are the mechanisms to protect that information? And then, so once again, we sort of implementation methodology. That's really around the reporting of the project management, the timeframes. So, what are the milestones that are key to this? Delivery risks. I can talk about the risks in a section, but really, risks, detail every risk that's going to be potentially occurring, and what is your mitigation strategy for that. Okay, so your access or future access to required infrastructure, capital equipment, technology, commercial. So obviously the IP agreements that will be shared, regulatory approval. So obviously you've got them covered off. If regulatory approval is going to take a long time, that may stall the project. So hopefully they're not sort of too limiting on the project. Your governance plan, risk management plan, and other. So these ones here, really you can go to town on these. So I've seen in the past something of this size, people would put a risk management plan and they would say, we see no risks to this project. What you want to have this is, 10, 15 pages of all the risks and all the mitigation strategies. So you're evaluated based on volume of these sorts of things. So governance plan, who's looking after the project, who are you reporting to, how do you check for quality, all those things, timeliness, who and when is getting paid when, all that sort of thing. So, okay, so now we're into the final section, still worth 25% each. So, okay, so your access or future access to required finance investment required to fund your share of the eligible costs. So who is paying for this project? Is it an investor or is it yourselves? So the best way to fund projects, or on paper appear to fund projects, is via your own cash. So demonstrate that you have the funds available. If you are successful in getting the grant, you can go and get whatever finance you want. You can go and get investors, you can get debt finance, whatever it may be. But to de-risk the application, just make sure it's your own cash. Talk about the split between each of the organisations that's going to be providing that cash. Your intended funding arrangements to support ongoing collaborative activities. So once again, who's paying for it? When's it paying it? You'll have a cash flow, Excel spreadsheet detailing when each of these money is going to be occurring, and who's going to pay it and when. Okay, your ability to fund and manage any cost overrun. Great. So detail, that's part of your risk management plan. What you want to have is, I'm not sure what the standard overrun cost is that you may want to have, but obviously 20% would probably look good on that. So talk about how you're going to manage that. So you've obviously got a finance manager that will be looking after the whole project. They will be reporting, weekly, fortnightly, monthly, whatever it may be, to the finance committee or to the project committee, and detailing what the cost overruns are. Obviously, dealing with the COVID environment, the costs are going to change in terms of to supply or manufacture of the equipment. So there might be timing issues as well. How are you going to deal with those costs? Who's going to pay for it? And then does that change anything else to do with the project? So if one company is going to be paying for it all, what do they get in return for paying more for it? Okay, the total private sector investment of the grant will leverage in proportion to private sector funding. So, and then obviously in kind. So go to the extent of detailing all the in kind. That's really going to help boost your project. So look at all the people involved, the time that they're going to be dedicating towards this, and then any uplift for administrative costs. I haven't checked that section, but normally you get like a 30% uplift on top of salaries. The government want to see good return on investment. So if you can spend a little bit more than what is required of you, that's going to look good. And then obviously the in-kind as well, that will continue going on and benefit for this project and Australia going forward. Additional investment that project will leverage includes support infrastructure or any kind. So any other organisations that are not included in this might be include as well, that others are going to benefit from this. And then anything else that is not eligible expenditure, go and detail what that is. So just look through the ineligible expenditure to say, hey, you're still spending extra money on this. So that is a quick snapshot of how I would apply for this grant. You've also got some other attachments to include as well. If you've got any questions, I can sort of detail how I would go through it as well, but just hit me up and let me know.